So I got back to New York. In the lowest and worst state I had ever been in my entire life. And with time on my hand, and totally frustrated, no way out anymore, incapable of getting the answer, I cried out for the answer and I couldn't get it. And it broke my heart. In the form of a heart attack. Well, after the heart attack, I was told not to take a step unless I absolutely had to, because there was a possibility that I'd drop dead at any moment. Of course, this is a terrible, shocking thing, having been so active all my life and suddenly being told that I cannot be active anymore. It's a horrible thing. And also, an intense fear of dying overwhelmed me, that I might drop dead any minute. And this stayed with me for days. It was a real horrible, low, spinning period there. Being an intense grip of fear of dying, of being a cripple for the rest of my life, and that I wouldn't be able to be active. How could I take care of me? All that. And after several days of that, I said, well, one thing I can do is still alive, try to get out of it somehow. Maybe there's a way out. And with the extreme desperation of wanting out, not wanting to die, I began to question, what the hell is it all about? And began to review, what is life? I must start from scratch. I must put all this aside. And I began to look, see. What am I? What is this world? What's my relationship to it? What do I want from it? Happiness. What is happiness? Being loved. Then I thought of all these girls who wanted to marry me. These beautiful, charming, intellectual girls. And that right now I have not only these girls, not only girls wanting to marry me, but I do have the esteem of my friends. And yet I'm miserable. The closest thing I sensed as related to happiness was love. So I began reviewing and reliving my past love affairs, looking at the points where the happiness, the little happiness that I had, grew. And all of a sudden, I got an inkling that it was when I was loving them that I had the highest feeling. I began to dissect and pull up and dissect all my high moments of loving. I remembered one evening, beautiful balmy evening in the mountains when I was camping in Virginia. We were both lying on the grass, both looking up at the sky. I had my arm around her under her head. And the nirvana, the perfection, the height of happiness, was right there. And I was feeling how great is love for Virginia. How wonderful is knowing all this nature. How perfect its setting. And I saw that it was my loving her that was the cause of this happiness. And so I immediately turned to the other side. Well, when she loved me, it was great. And I sensed it was not as great as what I just discovered. And I remember the moments when, publicly, this beautiful, charming girl told the public that she approves of Lester. She loves Lester. And I could feel that nice feeling of approval. But it was not a lasting feeling. It was just for that moment. And in order to get that feeling, she had to continue saying that. And at this momentary ego approval, it was not as great as that former feeling of loving her. Because as long as I was loving her, I was feeling so happy. But when she loved me, it was only moments of approval that gave me the happiness that it did. When I saw that it was not being loved that was making me happy, I went into it further, and I knew it was connected with that kind of thing, the happiness that I was having. I kept digging into it, and I discovered that I was loving when I was feeling good. Or that when I was loving, I felt good. And pull up other incidents to prove to me that this was so, and I saw it. That when I was loving, I was happy. Oh, when I saw that my happiness was determined by my capacity to love, I said, wow, I've got a handle on this thing. I got my hand onto the chain of happiness, onto a link of it, and I pulled out 1 or 2 or 3 links. And I decided I'm going to pull on that chain until I get the whole thing out. Get the entire chain. And I kept reviewing incidents from the past, and where I saw that I was not loving, I would change that feeling to loving that person. Instead of wanting them to do something for me, I would change it from my wanting to do something for them. Things like that I did. It was the first inkling I had as to what brings about happiness. And it was a tremendous thing because I hadn't had happiness. And I said, gee, if this is the key to happiness, I've got the greatest. And even the hopes of getting more and more of happiness was a tremendous thing at the time. Because this is what I thought was the number thing that I wanted, happiness. Unfortunately, most people are like I was. Most people want love and never feel as though they have it. Only because in order to feel love, you must love. This is a tremendous door opener to happiness. And as I said, unfortunately, most people don't see it, and even when they hear it, don't try to test it out to see whether it is so. If they would try it out, they would discover that their happiness depends upon their loving. And that the more they love, the happier they are. Period. Love. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. You see, these kids are saying, if you love me, you do it my way. That's the trouble with the world. What I saw was the more I loved, the happier I was. That's how I discovered it equates. Later on, when I began to move into people again, I used that to further develop my love. Having discovered that I was getting happier and happier, I wanted all of it that I could get. I wanted the ultimate happiness. So when I mixed with people, again and again, when they did things that I didn't like, and within me was a feeling of non-love, I immediately would change that attitude to one of loving them, even though they were opposing me. Until I got to the point where, no matter how much I was being opposed, no matter how much they defiled me and tried to rend me asunder, I could maintain a feeling of love for them. The extreme heaviness was becoming less. I felt myself becoming lighter. In fact, happier. There was a certain greater freedom I felt. There was an easier concentration of my mind because of it. And I began to look better at my mind. What is my mind? What is intelligence? And suddenly a picture flashed of an amusement park bumper car entertainment thing, where all the cars got their energy from a screen wire above. And this screen wire symbolized all intelligence, all energy. And that each driver of the car was taking the amount of energy and intelligence that he wanted from that wire, but steering his car blindly because he was bumping into other cars, and bumping and bumping. And that if I chose to, I could take more and more of that overall intelligence. And so I dug at that. I began to examine thinking. And its relationship to what was happening. And it was revealed that what was happening had a thought behind it at some time prior. And that I never before related the two because of the element of time between the thought and the happening. But I did discover that all that was happening to me did have a thought in that direction at some time prior. And then all of a sudden I realized that everything that was happening to me had a thought of it before it happened. And that if I could grab a hold of this, I could consciously determine everything that was happening to me. And above all, I was responsible for everything that had happened to me. Formerly thinking that the world was abusing me. And I saw that my whole past life and a tremendous effort to make money, and in the end, failing, was due only to my thinking. That I was seeking happiness, and I was seeking it in making money. And whenever the business started to make money, I began to lose interest. Because the money did not bring me the happiness I was wanting. And because it didn't, and I lost interest, the thing collapsed. And I had always blamed others and other things for the business collapsing. And here it was simply my subconsciously knowing that this is not the happiness thing that caused me to lose interest in it, that caused the business to collapse. When I lost the planing mill and everything, I remembered that when I closed it down, it was a feeling, oh, this tremendous effort. I hope I never go through this again. It was such an extreme effort to make that business pay with the extreme odds against it. It just took all my effort, energy, and time right around the clock to get it going under such heavy, difficult obstacles. So that when it collapsed, I had the thought, gee, I hope I never come back to this. But when I did come back in several months and found every building stripped, every piece of equipment gone, I said, oh, those son of a guns, they did it to me. But they'll suffer for it because this was the only industry in that small town of Magdalena. Ha, 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 how stupid they are. We undid the possibility of this thing ever starting up again. You run away with a little satisfaction in that. But I did think that they did it to me. That the market did it to me. That others were the cause for it. Until this realization that it wasn't money making that I wanted, it was happiness. And that when the money was coming in, the happiness was not there. Oh, this was a tremendous piece of freedom. To think that I am not the victim of this world, that it lies within my power to arrange the world the way I want it to be. That rather than being an effect of it, I can now be a cause over it. Arrange it the way I would like it to be. And that was a tremendous realization. A tremendous feeling of freedom. The realization that money did not give me happiness. Making money did not give it to me. Had me thinking and looking at others, and I saw how all my friends and all the rich men, when they made the money, they never stopped and relaxed to enjoy it. But they began to drive themselves more and more to get more and more of it. That what they had couldn't satisfy them. And here they are going after more of it. It made no sense. There's no happiness in getting money. I saw the world madly in the wrong direction. So, my need and want to make this money, I let go of. I also saw that the more we had of things, the bigger my business was, the more responsibility I had, and the more it had me day and night, right around the clock. The problems of business I would take to bed with me. And I would wake up in the morning with them, and even carry them through the night in the dreams. I realized that I didn't have these big operations, that they had me. Discovering that my happiness equated to my loving. Discovering that my thinking was the cause of things happening to me in my life. Gave me more and more freedom. Freedom from unconscious compulsions that I had to work, I had to make money, I had to have girls. Freedom in the feeling that I am now able to determine my destiny. I am now able to control my world. I am now able to arrange my environment to suit me. And lightened my internal burden so strongly that I felt there was no need that I had to do anything. Thus, this happiness was so great. It was a new experience for me. I was experiencing a joy that I never knew existed, never dreamed could be so great. And if this is so great, I'm not going to let go of this until I carry it all the way. I had no idea how far it could go. I had no idea on how joyous a person could be. So I began digging further on how to extend this joy. I further began changing my attitudes on love. I would imagine the girl that I wanted most marrying my friend or the boy I would want her to marry least, and then enjoying each other. To me, this would be the extreme in loving, and if I could achieve it, it would give me more of this wonderful thing that I was discovering. And so I worked on it. And I took a particular doll, that kind of girl. And so I took a particular doll and a particular girl. And I wouldn't let go until I could really feel the joy of their enjoying each other. Then I knew I had it. Or almost had it. Then, later on, I had further tested this in talking to people who were opposing me no end. And I was trying to help them. And I would consciously feel the greatest of love for them when they were attacking me. And it was so wonderful. I would, without any thought, thank them so profusely for having given me the opportunity of talking with them. And it threw them into a dither and question. But I really felt that. I thanked them from the bottom of my heart for having given me the opportunity of loving them. And they were making it as difficult as they possibly could. I didn't express that to them. I just thanked them profusely from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity of having been able to talk with them. Then I knew I had it. It was the love of a Christ. Contemplating the source of intelligence and energy, I discovered that it too was available. In unlimited amounts, and that it came simply by my freeing myself from all these former compulsions, inhibitions, entanglements, hang-ups, that I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to be subject to anything. Seeing this allowed this power that was right behind my mind to flow through like it was never flowing through before. And so that I had dammed up this energy, this power. And all I had to do was pry loose the logs of the dam, and that's what I was doing. And discovering these things. I was removing a log and allowing this infinite flow. Just like a water dam would flow if you just pulled the logs out, one by one. And the more logs you pull out, the greater the flow. And that was all I needed to do, is to remove these logs and let the infinite power and energy flow. And there were times when I get this realization of what I am that would put so much energy into me, I would just jump up in the air from my chair. I would go right straight out the front door. I would start walking and walking and walking for hours at a time, and sometimes for days at a time. I just felt as though my body could not contain it, that I had to walk or run some of it off. I remember walking the streets of New York City, 3 hours in the morning sometimes, just walking at a very good pace. Not being able to do anything otherwise, I had to expend some of that energy. It was so tremendous. And as I said, I would not stop until I could see the end of the line on this happiness. And I would go higher and higher and higher and say, oh my God, there can be nothing higher than this. And I would try, and I would go higher. I said, oh, it can't be any higher than this. So I would try and go higher. And but, oh, there can't be anything happier than this, until I realized that there is no limit to it. I would get incapacitated. I could look at my body and I couldn't move it. I was so top-heavy with ecstasy and joy. I was actually incapacitated. I would do this for hours, going higher and higher, and then I would have to work for hours to keep coming down and down and down until I could start being the body again in order to operate it. I saw the source of all this energy, of all this intelligence. The characteristic was basically harmonious. And harmony was the rule of the universe. And that's why the planets were not colliding. And that's why the sun rose every day. And that's why everything went. And on discovering this harmony, it fell in on me. I would go out into the streets. People would look at me, smile, and say hello. And I'd want to park my car. People from the sidewalk, 2, 3 at a time sometimes, to get off the sidewalk and help direct me into a tight parking spot. Policemen, taxi cab drivers would give me their parking spot when I couldn't find one. Everything was falling into line for me at that time. I don't think I ought to say this. I never would meet a red light. That's the extreme. To drive from New York City and not meet a red light.
I began imaging things that I wanted. Small things. And they came very quickly. And I realized the only thing that stopped me from getting something big was I just didn't dare to think big. So I asked myself, what's the biggest thing I can think of in the way of things? And I said, gee, a Cadillac with a specially built body. So I pictured a Cadillac with a specially built body, and I saw myself riding in it, and it was mine, and I dropped it. In about 2 weeks, an acquaintance came to me and said, Lester, I just bought you the most beautiful Cadillac. He described it. It was the color I had in mind. Everything just like I had seen it. He said a friend of mine bought it, got a specially built body, but he doesn't want it, and I got it for only $4,000. He said that, I looked at him, I didn't have the money. He said, oh, don't worry about the money. He says, I'll pay for it.
However, overnight, I thought about it. I had just gotten rid of my car. It was a nuisance in New York City. It was far cheaper to go by taxi and far, far more convenient than it was to own your own car. So I had given up my car. And I said, this car will be just a nuisance like the one I had before. And also, I did not want to be in a position where I would be the envy of man. And thirdly, I said to myself, well, if I've done it now, I can do it at any time I want. And so the next day I refused it and turned it down. And I tested it again and again. Of course, before the Cadillac, I tested on small things. And I discovered it worked. And I realized I was limiting myself. And that's what caused me to think, well, what's the greatest thing I can think of? Cadillac, especially their body. And I let go of the limitation, and I visualized that as being mine. And it came to me. And I dared even further. It was cold. And I wanted a short vacation of 2 weeks in warm country. And Los Angeles was furthest away from New York City, further in Florida. So I said, well, I'm having a vacation in Los Angeles over the Christmas, New Year holidays. With full confidence that everything is okay and taken care of, I walked out of the house. I immediately bumped into a man I hadn't seen for many, many years. He said, "Hey, Lester, I've been looking for you. Remember that money I owed you? I've been wanting to pay you. I didn't know what happened to you." And he paid me enough money to buy me a round-trip TWA ticket to Los Angeles, which I did, and immediately left. When I got to Los Angeles, it occurred to me to call an old friend who said, "Oh, I'm so happy you called, Lester. We just got a new apartment. We have an extra room, and you must stay with us. Where are you?" They picked me up. The next morning, I was in the kitchen, thinking, gee, here I am in Los Angeles without a car. It's like being without your legs. And I said, well, that's taken care of, and I dropped it. The next thought came Paul, an old friend that I had driven some years earlier from New York to Los Angeles. I called Burrow and he said, "I've been thinking of you, Lester. Where are you? I want to see you. I'm coming right over." And he was over to see me in a matter of about 15 minutes. We're having coffee over the kitchen table. And without my asking, he puts his hands in his pocket, takes his keys out, rolls it to me over the table and says, "You've got my car as long as you stay here. I have no need for it. I'm living near the studio and I walk to work." I said, "Thank you." So I had everything I needed by that time. And after, about 10 days, with the feeling, well, I'm going to go back to New York. It was about January the 3rd. I called up TWA, and they said, "Oh, I'm sorry. You have no reservations for 30 days. All taken up, and we can't even put you on a waiting list because the waiting list are 30 or more people." I just said, "Thank you," and I hung up, and I said, "Well, who needs a reservation? And you feel like go. The next morning I woke up and I asked myself, "Do you want to go?" He says, "Yeah, I think I want to go." "Okay, pack your bags and go." I packed my bags. I got down to the airport about 10 o'clock. Asked where the planes depart from New York, for New York, went to the gate, and the man was loading a plane for New York. And I said, "Are there any 9 shows?" He said, "Oh, yes, there is one, but wait until I load everyone. Just stand here." While he was loading, a woman asked the same question. He said, "I don't know, madam, but if you stand behind this man, we'll find out." He put her behind me. He loaded the plane, walked right toward me, put his hand around me, took this woman by the arm, and put her on the plane. As far as I was concerned, everything was 100% okay. He came back to me, and his jaw dropped, his mouth opened, when he realized what he had done. So I had to calm him down, instead of him calming me down. When I calmed him down, I said, "Well, when's your next plane?" He says, "Oh, in about an hour." "Oh, there it is, coming in right now." And he put me on that plane, which got me to New York 2 hours earlier than the one he took me off, and it was a non-stop flight. The first one I ever had cross-country. At that time, they all made at least one stop. The non-stop flights were new at that time. This was in days of the DC 6s and 7s, and Constellations. No jets at that time. It wasn't too easy for them to make cross-country non-stop flights. Then I remembered when I hung up and said, "Who needs a reservation?" I said, "Not only that, I went my first non-stop flight cross country. And that was the reason for his putting me off that flight and putting me on the next one. And so I got back to New York, started out with no money, and came back with no money. One morning, about 2 o'clock in the morning, with hardly no traffic on the West Side Drive in New York City, I was going along about 10 miles above the speed limit, which isn't bad at 2 o'clock in the morning and no cars around. And all of a sudden, from nowhere, there was a policeman behind me ordering me to drive off the ramp. I went off the ramp and he gave me a ticket for speeding. The next day I was going in the opposite direction of town on East Drive in the midday. I decided to pass a car. And as I was passing him, I went 5 miles an hour above the speed limit and got a ticket for it. And after the second ticket, I said, something's wrong here. What am I doing to cause this? And I was going back to just a few days prior when I was saying to myself, I should cut out this speeding habit I have. I can't seem to do it. How can I do it? Well, some good tickets will do it for you. At the time, it was sort of like daydreaming, and I wasn't aware of what I was doing. But when I asked what did I do to cause this, that thinking came up. I looked at it, and I dropped it and reversed it. And the speeding tickets stopped. I had thought that what formerly I thought was so real and solid wasn't real and solid. It was a product of my mind. And therefore my solid concrete foundation was cracking. And I knew I had to let go of it. It was not easy to let go of something I spent most of my life building up. That caused me to shake. I could tell that the adhesion of my stomach and duodenum was undone because formerly, in the peristaltic movements of them that were not together, I used to feel as though my whole stomach were jumping up and down. And after this healing, I never experienced that again. And therefore, I knew that all the other things that I thought were corrected, were healed. My heart was 100% okay because after that I would exercise strenuously and nothing bothered me. I once walked out of the house feeling fully convinced that I need no money, that I am going to eat. And as I walked along the street, I met a friend who said, "Hi, Lester," started talking to me and invited me out for lunch. There was another time I went out without money, knowing I was going to eat, and I saw a $5 bill on the ground, and I picked it up, and that paid for it. The reason for my proving things should be that in order to ensure myself that I wasn't kidding myself, I held on to a maxim that I only know that which I can do. And therefore, I proved everything by doing it. Cinderella is a new thing. I decided one day I want to see it. Tickets I didn't know at that time were impossible to get. But I knew I was going to see the picture. Walking down Broadway, I stopped into a sandwich shop right near the theater. And there was a sandwich. And the man asked me, "Are you going to Cinerama?" I said, "Yes." He said, "The show is going to begin in a few minutes." I said, "Oh, that's all right." He says, "Well, you have your ticket, don't you?" And I said, "No." He said, "You'll never get in there." I said, "Oh, I'm going to see it." I ate my sandwich. When I got to the theater, it had already started. And I couldn't get anywhere near the window because there must have been 60, 70 people between me and the window. However, the doorman in uniform was standing right alongside the window. And he looked at me and motioned, "What do you want?" And I put my finger up, "One." He motioned, "Okay." He got one ticket, broke through the crowd, gave it to me, and told me the price of it. I gave it to him, and I walked right in. I know the show had been on only for about 5-10 minutes. I didn't miss much of it. I had my seat, and I saw a very unusual thing. You're watching a movie, and it feels as though you're right in the roller coaster and things like that. It was beautiful. It was a real interesting principle I had. So nothing's impossible. And everything falls into line. I didn't even have to break through the crowd to go to the window to ask, "Give me a ticket, please." The doorman saw me, asked me what I wanted, over the heads of everybody. He was tall. I just put my finger up one, got the ticket, brought it out to me, and I went right in. No wait. The wonderful feeling that goes with all these unusual things is not the unusualness of it, but the feeling of God in operation. When you see the God part of you, and you know that your very essence is God, that is the delightful thing. And when things are happening, it's not you, it's God is your feeling. And this feeling of God in operation is the most wonderful of feelings. The miraculous or unusualness of it means nothing to you. But the oneness of God is the greatest of all things. When I started my search, I was a very convinced and absolute materialist. The only thing that was real was that which you could feel and touch. My world was as solid as concrete. My understanding of the world was as solid as concrete. And then some of these revelations came to me that the world was just a result of my mind, that the world was an afterthought of my mind. That thinking determined all matter, that matter had no intelligence, that our intelligence determined all matter and everything about it. But when I saw that the solidity that I formerly had was only a thought itself, and nice, solid, concrete foundations began to crack. Years of build-up began to tumble, and my body shook, and shook so much I just shook for days. I just shook like a nervous old person. I knew that concrete view I had of the world was never going to be again. But it didn't drop away gracefully with ease. For days I actually shook, until I think I shook the whole thing loose. Then my view was just the opposite of what it had been months previously. The real solid thing was not the physical world. It was not my mind, but something which was much greater. The very essence, the very beingness of me was the reality. That it had no limits, that it was eternal. And that all that formal thing I saw was the least of me, rather than the all of me. That the all of me was my beingness. I saw that I was responsible for everything that was happening in this universe. That I was responsible for the least action of the farthest individual or person or being in this universe. Because my beingness was the one and only beingness that was the cause of everything. It was my beingness that did the thinking. My beingness created the mind. My beingness created the mind, and the mind created the body. The basic source of everything is simply our beingness. Someday you'll see it. You created this whole universe. Trust me, in front of you, you created it. You'll see it someday. So what do you need when you see that? Mm-hmm. So the slightest thought you have for anything comes to you immediately. A harmony of living. Well, after this 3-month period, I wanted to prove everything, knowing that I was going to try to convey this to the rest of me. The first thing I decided to do was to become a millionaire. To prove to the world that anyone can be a millionaire. Just by conviction of it, anyone can be a millionaire. So I went into the real estate business with no cash, and I was buying apartment houses through mortgages and loans. But no effort. These things were coming into me until I had built up 23 apartment houses, 20 to 40 units each. Fell into me so easily. And then after I had it accumulated, then a higher thought came to me. Now I'll drop this and walk out with just a shirt on your back. And from here on, produce everything you want at will when you want it. And since that time, that has been operating for me. Everything I need comes to me as I need it. And that's the way life should be for everyone. Just like it is for the sparrow. Do the birds have to work hard, struggle, and calculate and pile up in order to live? No. It is provided for. And the animals are thirsty. Do they have to have maps to find out where water is? No. Instinctively, they're led right to it. And if God will take care of the animals and the birds, He will certainly take care of us. You need to accumulate. Accumulation is obviously a sign of insecurity. Everyone's convinced that he must do what he's doing in order to survive. And that's the only reason why he must do it. Everyone is right because our thinking makes it so. Whatever I think will happen. I think all peoples are crooked. My experience with all people would be there trying to be dishonest with me. And if I trust everyone implicitly, I know from experience, I have trusted. When I was in a real estate business, one man who was known to be dishonest, I handed him $6,000 in cash to go buy a building. He took the money and says, "You trust me with this?" He says, "Yes." And he went through a gesture that I'm sure was most unusual for him. He hugged me. He said, "You've got nothing to worry about." And we went out and we got the deal. We bought 3 apartment houses. It turned out to be very profitable. And I split the profit with him. Every deal had to be a very harmonious deal. Everyone in it had a gain. Made sure if there were a broker in it, he got his full commission. If the seller was selling it, he benefited by getting what he wanted, the building sold. And if there was a lawyer, he got his share. Everyone benefited in every deal. And that's the way all deals should be. There's no need for anyone to suffer from a deal. Everyone should get what he wants out of it. Everyone should benefit. Every seller wants to sell. Every buyer wants to buy. Harmony is the basic law of the universe.